Hello and welcome to another episode of Classes Off with Rosa. Do you feel sometimes that 24 hours are not enough to catch up with everything you need to do? Well, today we will discuss the dangers behind high performance principles, which many of us try to live by, as well as some guidance to get us out of that loop. Let me introduce my guest. I'm very excited of having Tuomo Vauhkonen. I think I'm pronouncing that okay. Is that okay, Tuomo?
That's very close. That's close enough. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rosa. But that's good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So let me tell you something about Tuomo. He's a guide instructor and coach with over 20 years of experience. He had a TEDx talk. He's been in over 40 countries and lived in 10 different countries, working with locals and running workshops, retreats, group and personal coaching. So Tuomo, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Rosa. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be in your show. Thanks so much.
So, can you tell me and tell us a little bit of you? How do you become a life instructor and why?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually interesting. I had a look of my sort of professional or sort of adult life a couple of years back, and and I realized like anything and everything that I've always done, it's been always with people helping as either a guide or as an like a dive instructor, as a teacher, and now as as a coach. So the label has changed slightly, but it's always been about helping people or teaching people or guiding people in one way or the other. And that was an interesting, so it's not something that I quote unquote became. I think it's something that or someone that I've always been. I think that's an interesting sort of perspective to look at it from the I'm a big fan of identity work and diving deeper into your identity and who you really are. And I realized that some years ago that that's who I really am. The label as such, I mean, some people call you a coach or a trainer or a guide or what have you, but the label doesn't really matter. I think to me is the purpose of it is what do we do with it and how we help others or possibly environments or animals or what have you. But for me it's more about who you are and what you do to better other people's either behavior or situations or life at large.
It's interesting that you mentioned the label because, yes, I completely agree with you. At the same time, I work with data, right? That's like my daily job, processing data and stuff like that. And I see how this label of coach, mentor is like all over the social media. And the problem sometimes is there are so many techniques, program, 5 days to do this, 3 months to become this. So many rules and guidance available in all different channels that how can someone be able to choose which one actually will help them versus which one are just like, people putting words together. Maybe they read it somewhere, maybe they heard someone saying, and all of a sudden they come up with a program. How can someone actually come to you, let's say, and say, wow, this is something that actually works. If I use these techniques, I actually will become better.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic question, and I suppose that's a the world, especially the social media world or the technological world that a lot of us are living in, is it gives us all these opportunities. It gives us all these possibilities to connect and to find solutions. Like one of the things that I always say that the how to or how we do something or the information is never a problem anymore. Like the information or the quote unquote steps of how to do pretty much anything in the world is not a problem. It's everybody's got that, at least in the Western world. We have that in our fingertips. Now, obviously, with that comes the problem or the challenge of exactly as you pointed out, Rosa, is how to choose or what is the right one for me, and especially as we are consuming more and more information, that challenge becomes larger and larger. So it becomes about implementation, I would say, and not just taking action or implementing for 1 or 2 days, I mean, for me personally, if I take on for myself, for example, a protocol or behavior or trying to, develop a new habit or sort of anything from business or personal structures, I try to implement it at least for 30 to 90 days because you never really know if something works if you only do it for a few days or even for a few
Mhm.
weeks. So having that sort of consistent mindset and persistent mindset and also patience to allow the work to work. Um, the 6-minute apps or overnight success or what have you, that just never happens. Like there needs to be a period of implementation being, I would say, minimum of 30 days, but it all depends on what are you trying to implement or what are you trying to change. But I would say at least sort of, 6 to 90 days would be a time period that you can see some kind of results, or at least the results that if it's worth of continuing. Because a lot of people say like you tried for 2 days, you tried for a week, and
Mhm.
oh, it doesn't work, and then you give up and you go to the next one, but you never actually put in the work. You never really gave it a good effort. Yeah, you never stayed consistent with it, if you will, and that's the only way to really realize and understand if something works or not. So I suppose the patience and persistence are maybe the words that comes to mind, and being able to shut down the other options and opportunities for at least for a couple of months, and then just try one thing or two
Okay.
things, whatever it is that we're working on. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, there was something very interesting that I found from your TEDx talk that I watched, in which you mentioned something that kind of follow with the same arena, which is you find all these techniques that are being pushed to us, like you have to do, get up, I don't know, 6 o'clock, be the first one to start, be the last one to finish. And I've seen this in the professional field and also like students, people that maybe are in college or, just finished college and they're starting their career and they feel somehow that they're already behind. Some fans from Instagram also has expressed the same sentiment in which you see them so young and I see them like, wow, they're full of opportunity. Their life is just starting. But somehow they feel already that they are behind because either they believe friends are ahead of them, they see that everyone else is being successful, and they just really like sometimes with tears and just like exhausted, feeling overwhelmed already because they don't know how to catch up. Do you think that this maybe has to do with all these ideas of so much to learn, so much to do, how to get ahead? And how can someone like that actually realize that, you know what, they might be in the right place where they are?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very large question, and there's many
Yes.
approaches to it. But let me answer it this way. Like I have a sort of semi-professional sports background, and I used to play basketball, especially semi-professionally, and tennis and football, and when I was sort of between 10 and 20 years old, and sports really gave me valuable lessons that I didn't really realize at the time. It gave me a lesson of understanding what winning and losing is, obviously in the sports arena, but then now later on, you can take those lessons directly into the life as well. And I remember when I was, 15, 16, 17, I, looked at the people like way above me, and people that were on this sort of my age that were a lot more skillful than I was, and they were a lot further than I was. And the sports allows you to look at yourself in a very physical sense. And when you understand, like, I'm lacking this skill set, I'm not as good as that person is in a physical sense, but especially in basketball or tennis or something like that, you understand that, hey, I need to do some work. It's not because of my mental or emotional abilities are, different, even though, mindset might be, is a big thing as well. But at least for me, that gave me valuable lessons to understand that they are further ahead, possibly because of talent, but more than likely because they've worked harder. They've built a skill set. They've trained harder. They have maybe different kind of coaches and so on and so forth. So if I want to get to that position or that space, there's a set of principles and set of practices, and I need to work different way to be able to get there. And even in that case, it's not guaranteed that I will ever get there. So the comparison, if you will, or looking at people further away from you or ahead of me or what have you, for most of the time for me, that has given me fuel, that has given me sort of opportunities and principles and frameworks to like, okay, if they got there, how can I get there? Instead of
Mhm.
like, those are the questions that I ask for myself is like, if they are there, there's definitely a way or a path that I can get to at least close to where they are, instead of looking at, oh, they are there and I cannot get there. So I think it's the comparison, if you will. It's how we attach our emotions and thoughts to that comparison, because we all do it.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to live in this world without comparing, but how that makes us feel, and then what we do with that comparison is what makes all the difference. Saying that, I'm supposed there's a, this is not obviously for me. It's very sort of useful advice as well. That if you compare yourself to others, then as I mentioned, ask yourself, how can I get there? And if you really want to compare yourself to someone, then compare yourself to the person that you were yesterday, and try to
Mhm.
better that person, instead of comparing yourself to someone who's 100 or 1,000 steps ahead of you and done 10 years of work before you ever even started. That's what I would say. But for me, as I mentioned, to recap that, the sports world gave me valuable lessons about winning and losing and how to deal with both.
That is a good advice, comparing yourself with yesterday's version of you. Now, let me ask you, Tuomo, you talk a lot about creating a lifestyle where happiness is a byproduct. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's was the title of my TEDx talk, or either it was a question of why lifestyle matters more than happiness. And let's put it this way: I got the whole idea from this very empowering and interesting TEDx talk from Jan Dapani, who was the monk, and I referred to on my TEDx talk as well. I referred the quote back to him as well, which where he says that if you want to attain happiness, if you want to get to this space called happiness, if you will, then create a lifestyle where the byproduct is happiness. And for me, just a bit of maybe a little bit more context. For me, happiness is not something that I'm chasing. I'm not really after happiness. Maybe in some point I was, but for me, happiness is kind of related to something that sort of comes and goes, kind of achievement, maybe even with goals. It's something that we have for a certain amount of time, and then, we don't have it. It's almost a bit like motivation. And that may not be the same for everyone, but for me, that's the case. But what I'm really truly after, and I speak just a tiny bit of that in my TEDx talk, is fulfillment. For me,
Mhm.
fulfillment, that's the feeling that I'm really after. And that's more sort of deeper sensation that's then related to purpose, for example. And it's something that when you contributing something to others, you feel that you're on purpose and you feel this sense of fulfillment. Whereas for me, happiness is something that sort of I get from the world, or when I'm creating those circumstances in my external environment, for example, to for happiness to be there. That's in a sort of larger sort of overarching principle, if you will. But there's a lot more nuances to it, and obviously personal thoughts, what other people think about happiness. And there's obviously, religions, and the Buddhism obviously talks a lot about happiness, but that's what that sort of larger scale it is. And then, you know, we can dive deeper into
Yes.
if you want.
And you mentioned purpose. And yes, I completely agree that when you are working towards your purpose, you will find that self fulfillment. Hence, you will feel those moments of happiness. But let's say for someone that hasn't figured out what is their purpose. And I know you being in over 40 countries and you work with different people, different culture. So I would like to know, what can someone do someone that doesn't know what their purpose is there any step that you suggest for someone to do that will help them figure out their purpose?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I wouldn't say that it's definitely not an overnight thing. Definitely for me, as I mentioned, like what I shared in the very beginning was when I realized like what have I always done? Like what is something that I never like it's not something that I've chosen to do these
Mhm,
things like guide and coach and trainer and what have you. It's something that is all it's part of me. It's more related to my identity of who I am. And then the overarching sort of principles, if you will, when it comes to purpose, for example. And then the other kind of differentiation, if there's also, and I talk a lot about passion and sort of potential and all these things, but passion is like you might have, for example, me myself, I've had multiple passions. I'm very passionate
mhm,
about, obviously, coaching, personal development. I'm very passionate about outdoors, trail running, surfing, traveling. Like these are very, but I'm very passionate about. Yet I have only one or maximum two elements that I can say like this is my purpose. Like purpose is something that it's more deeper. It's more like it's a craving for your soul. It's beyond your mind and your emotions, if you will. Um, whereas I mentioned the passion is more like something that you feel truly in your heart center, like you're really passionate about something, and goals and goal setting and potential and performance. That's more for the mind, if you will. But purpose is that sort of deeper underlying um attribute that we have, and it takes a little bit of digging, and it takes a little bit of quote unquote soul searching, if you will, um,
mhm.
to unlock it or discover it. It's more of a, a process of discovery instead of, or maybe somebody stumble on it. To me, the purpose is something that we give. It's always a contribution to the world, to the betterment of other people, or either their circumstances. So there's a few of
Yes,
them.
and the thing is, sometimes you have like a group of people that might not know their purpose, but then you have the ones that they do know their purpose, they know their passion, but then there is this conflict of interest. So, for example, I know some teachers that love teaching and they feel that's their purpose to help the kids and stuff like that. But because of some of the issues in the school system or they're not getting enough pay. The reality is, at some point, they have to make other decisions and maybe go away from their passion. So it's like also, I hear that a lot of artists, right? People that play music or are paint or stuff like that. But if that doesn't give them the enough financial incentive, then I think because of that, they might go into other paths that might not be that fulfilling for them. In those cases, is there anything that you could advise they could do? Or it's just like, well, you made the decision, deal with it now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a fantastic question, and I suppose most of us, um, rattle or battle with that type of question at some point of our lives. And I suppose something that came to my mind as you were speaking, Rosa, was I think it was Tony Robbins that long time ago. Maybe he had a program for it, but he talked about the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. And what I mean by that is the purpose that let's say take a teacher, for example, or a painter. They really feel fulfilled and on purpose when they are painting or helping children or teaching, for example. But then there's the mechanics and there's the sort of the science of achievement, if you will, and getting to make that work for you. And that's more mechanical. And what I mean by that
Mhm,
is that if you're a teacher, there's a multiple ways of teaching. You can obviously, and if you love teaching children, then if you wanna make it work financially for you, then that's about those quote unquote steps. That's about finding
mhm,
a way to make that work for you. And maybe you don't know how to do that. Maybe I don't know how to do that. But there's someone who can quote unquote monetize your purpose and your skills to the best of their abilities. And maybe you don't know that sort of mechanics of it, but that's what I mean by all the how to is already there. It's just maybe finding the right people that can help you and support you to make it truly work for you. And that's more of the, as I mentioned, the mechanics, more of sort of the physical side of it.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that maybe someone should not give up on their passion and they should continue doing what they love first and then just try to make that work financially for them. Reach out to people that can help them keep generating new ideas, but not to give up their passion or whatever they believe is their purpose. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously very sort of very hard to give an advice for a question like that that can work for everyone, because
And
one advice definitely not going to work for everyone. Like, there's
Mhm,
everybody's got their own situation, their environmental situation, their family situation. Are they, married with 3 children, or is someone single and in their mid-20s, or is someone, as I mentioned, like 4 children or 3 children and in their mid-50s? That's a very different circumstance.
mhm,
So chasing your passion is very, or chasing your purpose is, or living with your purpose is very different in both of those cases. And um when I was kind of in my mid-20s and early 30s, and I was just living my life and going all by myself, it was very easy. And right now, uh with the little family, we have a, different responsibilities. So you have to make it work different way, obviously. But I would say that there's always solutions. There's always
mhm.
solutions. That's what the world that we're living in, the opportunities are presented here. So it's for me, it's more about finding the right people, finding the right environments, and the right support to allow you to do what you want to do. I would never like I would hate to see someone leaving their passion and purpose behind and doing something that they less like, just for the sake of making the ends meet. And I know that is a reality for many. And but this situation that we are in right now globally, I would say, because of the internet and so on and so forth, we are more connected than ever. So the possibilities are there.
Yes, and also you bring the point, and this is why previously I asked you a little bit related to your experience in the different countries you've been, because I get a lot of like questions on related with financial success, younger, let's say late teens, early 20s, looking for a way that they can become financially successful. And the thing is, we all start on a different starting mark, right? So for someone that is struggling to find the food on that day, right, the journey is a lot different for someone that maybe has all the basic needs covered and it's matter of decision making. So for someone that's struggling with those basic needs that they don't have, what have you seen or what, based on the experience that you have with the different groups, what are the things that some have done in the past that help them build that success, even though when they have starting from, let's say, minus zero?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, I've worked in places like Southeast Asia, Central and South America, and obviously all around Europe, and right now here in the South Pacific. So everybody's situation is obviously different. And where I would start is maybe making a baseline, being very truthful and honest of where you are right now, and then where you want to be. And especially, mention about the financial success. Like, what does that mean for you in a monthly or yearly income? Like, where do you want to be? And then being super honest about it, because there is a certain threshold. I know worldwide, somebody, it's been varying a little bit, but a lot of people say that when you're making a certain amount of money per year or per month, then the level of happiness or fulfillment doesn't grow from there anymore. So you need to have the basic needs met and a little bit more. And then what that then looks like for you, if it's, a couple $1,000s a month, maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's 5,000, whatever, like, depends where you are. So figure out the sort of the basic needs, and then a little bit some on top of that, and then start working towards that. But be very careful with the fact that, especially when it comes to money, the more of it is not going to make you any more happier. It allows you to
Mhm.
make do more things, and, allows you to maybe a different type of life and lifestyle. But how that makes you feel is a very different reality than what you see on social media.
I completely agree. And I also know that for someone that is really struggling, they just need to get like to that baseline, right? Because I know for someone that is having difficulty to pay the bills, it will be, I think, like unnatural to expect that person to be happy, right? You need to bring yourself to a point where all those basic needs are covered. So, and I think during that time, trying to find solution, maybe learning new skills, doing whatever you need to do, but it needs to come to the point where those basic needs are covered. So then you can focus on something else. Um, One of the things that you mentioned in one of your, I think it was in one episode in your website that I saw, had to do with all the pressure that I think we all go through with multitasking and how this can affect our balance. If we are keeping ourselves busy all the time, and if we like the phone, the iPad, the computer, and all the social media, and everyone calling our attention. So, what are the steps or practices that you have tried that help someone to kind of take a break and minimize all those high performance principles that they think they're following, trying to be more productive, but at the same time, getting all this high level of stress?
Yeah, there are probably, I mean, the first that comes to mind is obviously, I suppose there's a lot of information right now, a lot of research out of that whole idea of multitasking. And then there's a different word called context switching, for example, which is I'll give you an example from that and then I'll give you a couple of solutions. But for example, multitasking is something that, a lot of people used to be like, we need to be very good at multitasking. We need to be able to do many things at the same time to be productive. And obviously that's not true anymore. We know that for sure. But then there's this other thing called context switching, for example.
Mhm.
So for example, I'll give you one of the worst things for your brain is this thing called flipping through different stories on Instagram, for example. What that does is your brain is going from what somebody's having for breakfast or what somebody else's perfect holiday for somebody working out at the gym. And you're getting presented every couple seconds or every 10 seconds, what have you, a completely different context, which is extremely hard for your brain to grasp hold of. And then
Mhm.
after that, flipping through those stories or somebody's like your news feed, it's the same thing. Then you're trying to focus on one single task for extended periods of time, and your brain is gonna go like, I need the new content
Yes.
again. So that's one of the reasons why especially the social media is so destroying to our focus, if you will. For example, right now I'm talking to you up here in my office, my phone, my iPad, my all the other devices that I actually that's the only other two devices that I have. They're downstairs. I have only this one window open and a notepad underneath of me that I'm fully focused to be here with you and with your guest, hopefully that people that are listening. So being
Mhm.
able to focus, I believe it's becoming a like a lost superpower from the past that we used to have, but that really can get you ahead in life and business and entrepreneurship a lot. And what I would say is from there, for example, trying to quote unquote hustle or trying to work hard for 8 to 10 hours a day is extremely hard. It's extremely hard to do high quality, deeply
Mhm.
focused work for more than 3 to 4 hours a day. So what I would say as a solution to this is schedule quote unquote deep work hours or periods into your day. More than likely for many people it's early in the morning or before midday, especially for me. Then there's definitely some people that are more focused and wired differently. So maybe they have it in the afternoon or late in the evening. But whenever you are at your best and more focused, then schedule the most important work for those blocks of time during the day. For me, it's basically between 8 and 11, maybe between 7 and 11 each day. So I do my best work, my writing, my creative work during those days. And then I'm not going to say that I'm not multitasking or not flipping through my, especially LinkedIn feed where I'm very active, but I try to schedule that for the afternoon. when I'm a bit more relaxed and sort of I'm in
Mhm.
a different brain and bodily state. So I'm able to then answer maybe emails and things like that. But I do not try to do those things early in the morning or before midday.
Thank you for that. That is a very good guidelines to be more productive. There is a phrase that I heard you using a lot, which is add more life into your style and that style back into your life. And I think that's very powerful. Can you break this down? And how can someone incorporate those techniques if they have, let's say, a 9 to 5 job, especially if they have a job that they hate and they have to stay there because of financial constraints and responsibilities?
Yeah, well, first of all, obviously that I'm like for me the word lifestyle is a big word. I That's how I lived my life always, and I've always went with the lifestyle first. That I've always wanted to create the circumstances and environments and people around me that allow me to live the life that I want to live, if you will. So that quote that you that was my ending quote for the TEDx talk. Adding life into your style and back then that style back into your life is obviously very much similar quote that a lot of people say that, add life into your years and then those years back into your life, if you will. But it's in a nutshell, it's basically living a better and more fulfilling life, if you will, for the longest amount of time if you can. So that's what I'm all about. So living a good life with the people that you love, doing the things that you care about, and having these kind of experiences in life that we're all about. Because yes, the work is important, and yes, we need to make money. Of course, I'm not going to say that that's not important, but in the end of the day, when you look back at back at your day, back at your week, or you back at your year, for example, what you remember is those memories and those experiences that were emotionally fulfilling, that really made you sort of when you felt loved, when you were doing something that were emotionally intense, for example. And for me, that word resonates very well. So it's all when I was sort of quote unquote pushing myself, or I was in a maybe slightly uncomfortable situation. That's when I've discovered something deeper within me. So those are the kind of situations and environments and experiences that I'm seeking. And that's what I mean by living the life and creating the lifestyle that allows you then to have more of those types of experiences, if you will.
Love it. Tomo, we're at the end of our session. So let me just ask you if you have any other remarks for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Like right now, especially this becoming year 2023, I'll be actually downsizing my social media a little bit. I'm still active a little bit on Instagram, but mainly on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my sort of playground. That's where I produce most of my content and do most of my writing. So social media wise would be probably LinkedIn, and I also have my website, obviously, where you can sign up for my a newsletter completely free of charge. I do a lot of writing these days, so I'm really enjoying that. And I provide tips and tools and strategies and frameworks for sort of performance-based lifestyle. So that's what I'm all about. And if somebody wants to go and check it out, feel free to check those.
Thank you so much. And that's great that you do that for free, actually, because, these days people just want to sell everything. They give you like one sentence for free and then they want to sell a program or 3 months this, 3 months that. So I'm glad to hear that you actually have some PDF and other letters that you can actually help people for free. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm looking forward having you back on a live event so you can answer questions to our viewers. And if any of you want to find out more about Tuomo, please look at www.tuomocoaching.com. It's right in the link within the podcast. So you just need to click the link. Thank you so much, Tuomo, for being here with us and can't wait to have you back.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Much appreciated.
Coming up, we will have more topics on mental health, the issues with our education system, global warming, and much more. Stay tuned.